We are back here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to continue talking about some more quarterback stories around the NFL. This time, bringing up the harsh, very real comments that Tua Tagovailoa made about his former head coach, Brian Flores. And before we get into the quote, let's go through some of the history of what broke down between these two guys to maybe get a better understanding of why Tua had these words to say about Brian Flores. So, to start off, Tua was drafted in 2020. At that time, Brian Flores was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. And like it usually happens for rookie quarterbacks, Tua didn't start right away. You get, used to that. That's something that's not abnormal, especially with Tua coming in and the injury concerns. Not too big of a surprise that he was on the bench to start, right? Especially with Ryan Fitzpatrick during that time also being on the roster. He was looked upon as a very solid quarterback to at least have on your team to get by, to give you the results when needed. He's not going to lose too many games for you. So they had that going for them for the start of that 2020 season. And it was until halfway through that season that Tua started to become more of a prominent name. He actually started in some games halfway through the year over Ryan Fitzpatrick. And you would think that that was the opportunity, right, for Tua to take the job, and run with it for the second half of the year. But it didn't happen like that. It actually went as bad as it could have, like I always mention, because Brian Flores actually benched Tua twice during the 2020 season. And, instead of riding out through some of the problems, through some of the obstacles that they ran into, Brian Flores benched them twice, brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick again, and right away, not a great start to Tua. Like I said before, it's not ideal. That's almost like my worst nightmare with a rookie quarterback or just any new quarterback, to start the new guy, give him an opportunity, and then just shock his confidence right away by benching him. Not only once is bad enough, but twice like Brian Flores did. Right away, the relationship isn't off to a good start, and then you follow that up in 2020, which was an odd year as well, because you had the Miami Dolphins and especially Brian Flores really trying to go out and try their hand at attaining Deshaun Watson in that offseason. They were one of the major contenders, and they made it pretty obvious that they really wanted to go out and get Deshaun Watson in favor of Tua just after 1 year of drafting him. And already, not only did you bench Tua twice, did the organization almost not show full faith in the fifth overall selection that they drafted just a year ago. They were ready to move on from him right away, trade him potentially for Deshaun Watson, and obviously that didn't end up happening. So now you're left in a very awkward situation, because the quarterback now knows that you were ready to give up on him. You drafted him very high, and now you didn't get the other guy that you wanted, so you're stuck with this quarterback after shocking his confidence and really not believing in him to the full extent. And all of that broke down and ended up with Brian Flores being fired after the 2021 season. Mike McDaniel comes in after a season or two with Tua. After this past year, you see the level that Tua Tagovailoa has reached under Mike McDaniel, having a Pro Bowl level season. And now, so many months, so many years actually removed from those events, Tua appeared on the Dan Le Batard show recently and was asked about the differences between Brian Flores and Mike McDaniel. And that's where he didn't really hold any punches. He didn't hold anything back in explaining it in the way that he did in this quote. He said, "To put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you that you suck at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this, and then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this, you're accurate, you're the best, whatever, you're this, you're that, how would it make you feel listening to one or the other?" And pretty clear on who he's talking about, obviously, saying who he's talking about without actually mentioning Brian Flores' name. And then he later alluded, not mentioning Brian Flores directly by name, but you could obviously guess who he's talking about by alluding to Brian Flores and being a terrible person, and basically explaining how after 2 years of that, he almost started to believe all the words that Brian Flores was saying to him, and really started to question whether or not he belonged playing at that level. And he went on to say that it took about 2 years of sort of training that out of his mind before he got to the point where he is today with Mike McDaniel. And I think you could see it in his personality now when you talk to him, when you see him out there. Not only does that come with years of being in the NFL, but I think truly that you see the different kind of results that you've gotten with two of the head coaches, one with Brian Flores and the panicked, just anxious Tua that you got early on. Again, a lot of that comes with the youth and inexperience, but really with Mike McDaniel now, always shooting confidence into Tua Tagovailoa, and now you see Tua a lot more happy, a lot more confident in himself, and it produces a season that he had, leading the NFL in passing yards, making the Pro Bowl, MVP talks at one point at the start of this past year, and you could almost, it's not a direct correlation, just with switching the coaches, but it doesn't help the case too much for Brian Flores to see him get fired, have 2 seasons with Mike McDaniel, and see almost a completely different Tua. And it almost validates what he's saying here. And now getting into the comments that he made on, I never know if it's actually true or not because I obviously wasn't there. So you got to take Tua's word for this. And you could almost see that it's a little bit more true because I think today, or it was yesterday, that Brian Flores, addressed these comments and didn't deny them in any sort. So you can, gives you more reason to believe in what Tua is saying. So to now get into it and talking about whether or not, Brian Flores was right or wrong in doing this, I think it just depends really on, his coaching style and everything like that. He was brought in through the Belichick tree, and seeing Tom Brady get coached by one of the best coaches of all time, that worked for them, right? That was perfect for that relationship, for that situation. Both of them were almost cut from the same cloth, Belichick and Brady. How just maniacal and sometimes some of their expressions were pretty, even keeled, lifeless in a way, and they were the perfect match for each other. Belichick knew that he could say and, motivate Tom Brady in a certain type of way that, Brian Flores seeing that and seeing the results especially that came from it, maybe he tries to adapt that. Maybe he tries to be aggressive and confrontational with his players, and now taking that from Bill Belichick and applying it to his coaching style, especially with being a defensive coordinator too. I think that comes with it a little bit, just being more amped up and aggressive, you could say, for Brian Flores. And he applied that obviously to Tua, and you could see now that obviously that didn't go as planned. And I think the biggest reason, obviously, I'm sure you guys have heard a bunch of people mention it now, is just that it takes a different sort of approach to coach different players, right? You can't just always scream at players, tell them that they're not good enough, tell them that this throw was awful. It requires a different sort of leadership, a different sort of approach on a personal level to coach different players. And, not everybody can be coached like Tom Brady. Not everybody, obviously, not everyone is the player Tom Brady was, but also they're not the same person. I saw the interview Tom Brady did with Stephen A. Smith at Fanatics Fest over the weekend, and he mentioned one of the things that got him motivated was just being angry, just being, very emotional in that sense, finding anything to get him mad, and that way he played better. And what gets you more mad than your coach telling you that you're awful, that throw was pathetic and things like that? That got Tom Brady going. That motivated him to play better. Tua clearly isn't the same person. And I think to me, what separates, great coaching, what separates great leadership from just good, solid coaching that gets the job done sometimes is that you're able to adapt to the different personalities that you have on your team. You can't talk to Tom Brady the same way that you can talk maybe to a Julian Edelman or somebody like that, or Gronk in that sense. You can't talk to Tua the same way that maybe you can talk to Tyreek or Jalen Waddle or Raheem Mostert in that sense, or Christian Wilkins, Jalen Ramsey when they had Christian Wilkins on their team. It requires a different sort of personal approach to get these guys to all buy in. And that's, again, what separates the all-time Hall of Fame coaches from really good ones. And obviously, it might not have applied to Bill Belichick. I don't know exactly how he talked to other guys, but when you have one of the best quarterbacks at all time, sometimes that is able to mask your maybe inability to connect with other guys in different sort of ways. But nowadays, when you don't have the go as your quarterback, obviously, you have to take different approaches to coach these guys, and not everybody can be approached or talked to in the same way that Tom Brady can. And obviously, Brian Flores, getting his first, cracks at it as a head coach. You can't fully, just go full in on him and say that he was completely wrong. Like, how could you do this sort of thing to Tua? But that's just how, like I mentioned before, how he saw it happen, how he saw it develop into great results. He took that and ran with it, and obviously, you can only hope that he learned from it. But to some people or anybody that believes that this is just weak, when Tua Tagovailoa says, mentioning what Mike McDaniel said to him, saying, "Dude, you're the best fit for this. You're accurate. You're the best. Whatever. You're this. You're that." Some people might take that as a sign of weakness, that Tua needs to be, cuddled, have an arm around him and, say that everything's all right, and interpret it almost as a weak sort of personality, soft player to some people's extent. And to that, I would just say, it's not really it's not a sense of just being soft or weak or anything like that. It's just, if you're a head coach and you have the opportunity to coach, a talented offense, a talented player like Tua was being drafted so high, it's not a sense of this player just being weak. They're not falling in line to how I'm coaching him. They're just weak. They're not built for the NFL level. Having that mindset is very much just one-dimensional and very much just not a way of successfully approaching, getting the best out of your players. With so much that they invested in Tua, and the fact that having this mindset of just coaching him one way and pretty much just throwing away the investment that you made with Tua by not trying to adapt and trying to get the best out of him is just not the right mindset to take at all, because at the end, you end up losing more than you gain, because who ends up getting fired after things not working out with Tua? It's Brian Flores. So not being able to adapt and not being really able to connect with Tua and trying to change your coaching style in a way that fits him, not just one size fits all, ends up costing Brian Flores the job, right? Yeah, Tua might not have fallen in line, and then he has all these bad things to say about you. But again, at the end of the day, you're the one that loses your job because you're not able to adapt and get the best out of Tua. So at the end, I think it almost serves as just another example to show other coaches of how really it should be done. Not everybody is the same player. Being adaptable is one of the best things you could do, not only as a head coach, but as a quarterback, adapting to the new age of the NFL, or if you're a new coach, again, changing your ways to fit the mold of the NFL today, and just overall being able to relate to everybody is one of the best things that you always hear players talking about coaches like Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Andy Reid, or Sean McVay. They're able to connect with these guys on a personal level, and that's why so many players want to play with them. And, maybe the results aren't necessarily always there, but being able to do it is not a surprise why the Steelers or the Rams or the Chiefs are always contending teams. Is because their head coaches are able to connect with everybody and get the best out of all the different personalities that they have on their roster. So that's what it happens. That's already in the past with Brian Flores and Tua. I like the answer that Brian Flores gave just today, I want to say, on this entire situation, saying that he can only learn from it. And, it's in the past already, so not too much to crucify Brian Flores, because, again, it's just what he saw. He saw what worked, and he tried to apply it, I would assume. So you can't kill him over it too much at this point in his career. Being a defensive coordinator, too, I think just suits him better. And hopefully he can have a good season with the Minnesota Vikings there this year. But that'll wrap it up for this segment. We have some more quarterback talk now with one of Brian Flores' old teams in the New England Patriots, talking about their quarterback battle still being wide open, and deciding between Jacoby Brissett and Drake May could be closer than originally anticipated. Gerard Mayo weighs in on it, and we're going to talk about whether or not it's too early to fully buy into Drake May, or is this the right decision to take. We'll be right back with that topic. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
Looking for